Okay. Got it. Okay, very good. Thank you, whoever did that. Okay, so we're recording that. So we have a lot of people signed up for this, and I see about 41 came in, which is already very encouraging. Please, a few points here before I show you the schedule. So please keep yourself on mute. We have a lot of people. So we and I and the co-host will be putting you on mute. It's very important to hear each other here. We will be having let me show you very quickly the schedule here. So this is Israel time. So we are, after a brief introduction here, we'll have the first of 5 speakers. First one will be Dr. Batya Yaniger. Each of the speakers will introduce him or herself. After that, I have the pleasure of speaking. We will then have what I call reflection questions. So please have perhaps something nearby where you can write down something. It's very important. And afterwards, we'll be going to breakout rooms. So another thing is very important is please stay in the session all the time. Even if you have to leave, just don't disconnect, because otherwise it gets very, very hard to put you in breakout rooms. We'll have a 15-minute break. We'll have the next presentation by Dr. Erkan Kalam from Turkey. And then we'll have a presentation from Sarah Len, who I think now is in Germany or Lisbon, one of the others. Again, we'll have a reflection question for a short journaling. And again, we will put you into dyads this time and for a discussion about what you took from those discussions there. And the final presentation will be by Nino, who will then have a full group discussion. We'll summarize the contents, a little clip, a few announcements, and that will be it for today. And tomorrow is another day as well. For the sake of time management, we don't have a question and answer period per se. So if you have questions, please do so and put them in the chat. We will definitely get to those questions, but not during the session here. We'll write back to you afterwards when that particular person's here. So there's no Q&A. And the event is being recorded. It will be shared with people who signed up and couldn't make it right now. I'd like to invite Mark. Mark, are you there?
I am.
Yeah, Mark's in the States. It tells us a few pointers about the committees. You'll talk about it more later on. Mark, give us a few words about the committees and the work we do.
Ronnie, before Mark, maybe it will be good to mention that people should separately register for the tomorrow's conference.
That's right. Yeah, so that's right. Thank you. So the Eventbrite, if you signed up at Eventbrite, there's 2 separate days. You gotta sign up for both days. Otherwise, you won't have a room the second day. So just remind that. Thank you, Arkan. Mark.
All right. Hi, everyone. Again, welcome. I just will be sharing a link here in just a moment where you can do an evaluation, and you can also fill out interest in joining different committees. If you're interested in, or anything you're interested in pursuing within the Global Logotherapy Initiative, we have, for example, digital marketing, community outreach, presenting logotherapy to wider audiences, practitioners, individuals in different modalities, education, so creating specific targeted presentations and joining in that education of others about logotherapy, and then personal and professional enrichment, more kind of centered in our own community. So all of those are available to join. They're all moving and doing good things already. We'd love to share with you. And those are part of the evaluation form as well. So look forward to hearing from you, and thanks for being here.
Yeah, great, Mark. Thank you. And yes, okay. I should mention one comment here. So what is the Global Logotherapy Initiative? Well, it's an initiative that began in August. We had the first meeting in August, and I see that this, okay, that should be okay, I think. And the idea was that we're all very passionate about logotherapy and the message it has for the world. And logotherapy, unfortunately, has been quite limited in its exposure in certain circles, and other circles it was not. So we said, why not go and connect people around the world on a grassroots level, those who are working in logotherapy, those who are teaching logotherapy, those who are studying logotherapy. And that was what it was all about. It was 30 months ago. So let's keep in mind that it's all very young. We're open to a lot of initiative and a lot of directions. And if for some reason it doesn't work perfectly today, give us some grace, because it's a startup and we're online and it's Zoom and anything can happen. So I hope you enjoy, and thank you for coming today. I'm going to go over to you, Batya, and why don't you get started right now in your first presentation?
Okay, hello everyone and welcome. My name is Batya Yaniger. In 2011, I started the Viktor Frankl Institute of Logotherapy in Israel. But as Ronnie mentioned, this is not an initiative of our institute. It's an initiative of people who are students of logotherapy and past and present of my own and of others. And we want to do something, global that's on a grassroots level. But just to tell you about myself, I came from a background of social work, and I wanted to specialize in something in the therapy that I did. And I found out about logotherapy. And when I heard that Viktor Frankl said, you are pushed by your drives, but pulled by your values, then that really resonated for me. And I said, okay, that's what I want. And I went ahead to study. But what I want to talk to you about now, before I give you my presentation, is just a short 5-minute summary of logotherapy in the way that I see it. Okay, so just a minute. Okay. I can get my mouse to cooperate. Okay, just a second. There we go. Okay. Okay, so Viktor Frankl was born in 1905 and died in 1997. And he was a psychiatrist and philosopher and psychologist and Holocaust survivor. And he realized that we are free to decide, that the freedom of a human being is the really root of what it means to be human. And that's what allows us to change. That's what allows us to shift our attitude and be resilient and everything that we do. And we also want meaning and purpose. We care about whether our life has a meaning. We don't want to just, be born and do a few things and die at the end, and who cares about what our life was. So every single moment of life, Frankl said, is an opportunity. And even suffering is an opportunity to do something good with it. There are values that are always possible to fulfill in life. And those objective value possibilities speak to us as subjects. So even though there's a true value that's out there, that seemingly just exists on its own without us, but it can only become a value, it can only be manifest in reality once we do something to fulfill it. So meaning is found in various ways, either by contributing to the world, by experiencing something, or when there is nothing else we can do, by choosing our attitude. Logotherapy is an education to responsibility. That's what Frankl wrote about. And therefore, there's always something you can do to respond, response/ability, in whatever situation you find yourself. Some of the major concepts of logotherapy are freedom, responsibility, conscience, love, self-transcendence. So that's a lot on one foot. If you know about logotherapy, you'll understand what I'm saying. And if you don't, it'll give you a taste, and hopefully you'll be curious to learn more. So what I want to talk about today is we're talking about, global subjects, right? Of what makes logotherapy beneficial for the world, especially in today's world. So I want to talk about the individual and the collective, and how to be a meaningful part of a meaningful whole. Because if you think the whole of the world is meaningful, but you are not a meaningful part, then you won't care about that, right? You'll be irrelevant. And if you think you're a meaningful part, like you are meaningful, but the whole is not meaningful, it's just chaotic and, and isn't going anywhere good, then you won't care very much if you have some meaning to your life either. You need to feel like you're part of something bigger. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a story, which we will see afterwards how it relates to what we're talking about. My son Rafi, when he was just turned 16, he did something which I felt was a perfect example of what meaning is about. My son Mayor and the rest of the kids were all playing outside in the snow. And for some inexplicable reason, I had the door locked and I was in the house and I was working on my computer and I didn't want to be interrupted. So when they rang the doorbell, I didn't answer right away. But what I didn't know was that this was an emergency because Mayor had thrown a snowball and he slipped in the ice and fell and knocked out his 2 front teeth. So here's Rafi. He's a responsible kid and he's trying to figure out how to get my attention. You know, they didn't have cell phones. It wasn't that long ago, but long enough that there were no cell phones. And what did he do? He shut off the main switch of the electricity in the house. Okay, that really got me to the door. So, okay, so what is meaning? All in that one story, you can see that meaning has to do with being in a situation where you see there's something that's needed to be done. The situation is kind of calling you to do something, and then there's something unique that you are uniquely able to do to respond to it. And then when you do that, now that becomes a meaning in the world. That becomes a meaning that he by responding in the way that he did, that was meaningful. Okay, now a question I want to ask you, which is we'll think about throughout it as I'm talking about various things, is a question that's asked often today is what's more important, individual freedom or collective responsibility? Because if we want to focus on how we can be a meaningful part of a meaningful whole, so we could say, well, the individual is more important, right? But the whole is important too. Like we have to be responsible towards the collective. Okay, so the first place I would go to answer this question is what is the meaning of the principles? We always have to go back to the principles of logotherapy because that's what everything is based on. And the principles are meaning of life, freedom of will, and will to meaning. But the way people understand these principles is incorrect very often. The meaning of life, they think it's just my invention, what I decide, and anything goes, anything can be meaningful, right? So students will ask me, what Hitler thought that what he did was meaningful, right? And that shows that there's an incorrect understanding of the meaning of meaning, right? Because meaning means that there's something that is really and truly objectively meaningful. We have to explain like how you know what that objective meaning is, right? But there's something meaningful that is waiting for me to respond to it, right? So that's what meaning is. Freedom, it's just arbitrary. It's just, I'm free to do whatever I feel like, whatever moves me that day. It's a whim. No, freedom means conscience, not arbitrariness. It means that your conscience tells you, and you are free to follow your conscience. The will to meaning, is that what my ego feels like? No, it's to want what is called for, to want what meaning life is really showing you. So when you have freedom without responsibility, it's not really freedom at all. It's reductionism, it's egocentrism, it's value blindness. It means that you are just operating on the level of the psyche and the body, and you're not operating from your spirit. And so that's what happens when you have freedom, but it's not really freedom. Okay, what happens when you have responsibility, but it's not really responsibility? Then you have totalitarianism, coercion, abusive relationships, right? Because it's always going to be someone shoving down your throat something that they want you to do, which is not necessarily best for you, which is not necessarily in your best interest. So therefore, we're asking the wrong question. When we asked the question, it was a trick question that I asked, right? In other words, when I asked the question, what's more important, individual freedom or collective responsibility, right? Well, if freedom doesn't include responsibility, then we should reject it out of hand. If responsibility does not include freedom, we should also reject that. So the question just makes no sense, right? Because we should reject both of them instead of saying which one is more important, right? And if they are understood correctly, that freedom is the freedom to be responsible, then there is no conflict between them. Then it's not an either or. It's not either freedom or responsibility. It's both. Freedom to be responsible. And that is what makes us human. So if we look at Frankel's metaphor of the mosaic, this is how we can understand this. Okay, each tile is completely unique. It's unlike any of the other tiles. And it finds its meaning when it's integrated into the whole of the mosaic. So it's the same thing, that each unique individual finds their meaning when they are integrated into the whole. And the community, at the same time, needs the individual, because the community, if it's missing a few tiles, right, then it won't be that beautiful mosaic that it is. So the individual needs the community needs the individual. Now, Frankel said in that same place that the mass does not tolerate individuality. The mass is the sum of depersonalized entities. So when you have a community, just like I said, you can have responsibility that's not truly responsibility. You can have freedom that's not truly freedom. You can have community that's not truly a community, right? If it's just a community of machines, of people who are acting like machines, people who are acting like animals, it's not a community, right? If the individuality of the members is not recognized, if the individuals are not allowed to be free, to be themselves, then it's not a community. A community is a community of responsible persons. So what is the right set of questions based on this tenet of Viktor Frankl? The question then becomes, are we living in a mass or a true community? First of all, because Frankl said that community is community of responsible persons. Okay, so what are we living in? Second of all, what must the collective do in order to be a meaningful whole? And what must the individual do to be a meaningful part of the meaningful whole? So we just take those two parts of the sentence apart and say, okay, what makes the collective meaningful? What makes the individual meaningful? A meaningful community is where the individuals are needed, where the community feels like they need each individual. Not only they need them, but they need to hear them, that everyone listens to and learns from each other. And it sounds so simple just to say everyone should listen to each other. But nowadays, like even in families, people are not listening to each other. I had a conversation with someone where he said, okay, listen to why I believe what I do. And I listened and I said, yeah, I agree with X, but I don't agree with Y. Like there's a nuance there. There's something else that you're saying that I need to differ on. And he didn't hear that. It was like, oh, as soon as I agreed with X, then forget about Y. Okay, like, but to really listen, as if like this is the most important thing in the world, to understand what the other person wants to say. And that uniqueness is embraced because you need it. You need to hear that other person. Okay, now what does it take to be a meaningful part? There's clarity and wisdom that arise out of seeing the totality of the situation. So we need, when we talk about conscience, and people think of it as intuition, well, we need our rational minds too. We don't throw the rational mind out the window, but we need a combination. We need to use our common sense, see the whole picture of what's going on, understand ourselves, understand our relationship to what's going on out there. So we need a lot of clarity in whatever way we can get it. And we need to communicate. As I said, we need substantive truth-seeking dialogue, where it's not who wins, that's the goal, who wins the argument, but that we both want to get to the truth. Okay, and if we both want to get to the truth, then we have to find out what aspect of truth are you bringing out and what aspect of truth are you bringing out. And there has to be caring, there has to be value awareness and fulfillment of those values. So once, several years ago, I didn't have a car. It's very hard to get around my community without a car, especially if I want to go shopping, I have lots of groceries. So, so I went shopping, I'm standing there at the corner, and every car that goes by, I tried to get a ride. Every car that goes by is going somewhere else. They're not where I need to get to. Okay, finally I gave up and I said, okay, the next car, I'm just going to take the ride and I'll get off at the main road and I'll walk from there, or I'll get another ride from there. So I get in the car and he's driving along, and we get to the main road, and I thought he was going to keep going straight. No, he turned right. I said, where are you going? Like, you don't have to take me home. Like, just you said you had to go to Jerusalem, so he turns right. And then I said, okay, now you got to the entrance to my community. I can get out here. I said, no, where do you live? He turns, he goes in, and he's going and going. So like finally I thought, okay, he's driving there already, so I'll just tell him where I live. I get out and I said, thank you so much. That was so kind of you. You didn't have to do that. And he said, well, I thought to myself, like, you could be my mother, right? And if my mother was standing there carrying all these heavy groceries, like, would I just let her stand there? No, I would take her home. So I took you home. Okay. So a lot of times you just need to look around you. And if you want to be a meaningful part of something, you need to just see what is the need, what is going on right in front of you that you missed, that a look on someone's face that shows that they need to talk to you, and so that's the idea. You just need to be aware and open up your eyes a little bit more. And then conscience, to listen and follow what your conscience says. So I thought of like a bunch of things that show what conscience really looks like in everyday life. So one is breaking the rules. Okay. So what Rafi did was he broke the rule, right? Because you don't just go for no reason and shut down the main switch of the electricity, right? But he knew that this was a situation where that's what had to be done, right? And there are people, righteous Gentiles who saved Jews during the Holocaust, that broke rules. There are people who are whistleblowers because of corruption, and they break rules, because they want to do something, even if it's to their own detriment, but that will be for the good of society, that would be for the good of the other person, right? So sometimes rules can be immoral. Sometimes laws can be immoral. Sometimes, even if it's not immoral, it can be inappropriate for the situation. And that's why Frankl was so careful to say that meaning is unique. Meaning is unique to the individuals, unique to the moment. You can't have just a general rule about anything, because every situation is different. And that's why you need your conscience to be able to sort out what is unique about this situation. Okay. Secondly, to think for oneself, to use both your rational and your intuitive sense, to do what you're uniquely able to do. It requires trusting yourself, right? Some people say, like, I don't trust myself, so I just rely on what these people say. Okay, but that doesn't work, because sometimes the other people can be deceiving you. So then the argument is, but what about self-deception? Okay, sure, you have to be careful about self-deception too, but it doesn't get you off the hook, right? You have to still try to listen to that inner voice of wisdom. And you usually, if you listen honestly, usually can hear it. Self-transcendence. It automatically makes you transcend yourself and your own interests when you're listening to your conscience. And courage, not to fear other people. Frankl, when he left the camps, he said, now I do not need to fear anything except my God, right? Why did he say that? Because it doesn't matter if you call it God or you call it the universe or you call it something else. But the fact of the matter is that there's something that we listen to, that we realize this is what's right, despite everything else. And this is what I have to have integrity about, and not be afraid of other people. So it's not always easy. Like it's, sometimes it takes a lot of guts to stand up for what you believe in, to stand up for what's right and not be afraid of other people. But that's what conscience takes. Conscience takes courage. And then there were people who say I have no choice. Okay. So choice is very important. Choice is how we use our conscience, is how we make responsible decisions in life. But when you get to this point where it's so clear to you that this is what you have to do, and you say, I could not live with myself if I didn't do that, okay, then that's the sense that I have no choice but to do this, right? The sense that this is just too overwhelmingly obvious and clear to me that this is what needs to be done. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed my presentation. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Batya, for a beautiful presentation. I'll always remember that you could be my mother. A good a good statement right there. Thank you, Batya. Okay, so I will go on for my presentation now. And I'll introduce myself briefly. My name is Ronnie Dunitz. I'm Israeli, originally from America. I spent some of my central years of my life in East Asia studying Asian arts and culture. I've been a business coach, a life coach, a group facilitator for about 19 years now. And I'm a graduate of the advanced training of Batya's Viktor Frankl Institute in Israel. I also I'm focusing now on the second half of life, how people need and can cultivate meaning and wisdom as they grow older. I have a group that's on Zoom where I've been running for 2 years now, from people from 50 to 150, and some of them are in the audience right now. I'm also doing my PhD on something that's very relevant. I'll talk about that in a second here. So I'd like to start by saying something on a personal level. Well, I first think that the way I want to relate to this topic is on a personal level. When Nino first approached us with the idea of Viktor Frankl around the one humanity concept of connecting global cultures and individuality, I said to myself, yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, I don't really see Viktor Frankl as being a social thinker of connecting communities and global thinking. He wasn't a professor of sociology. He wasn't a social change maker per se. I said, I don't know, if this works. I know whatever I've read about Viktor Frankl has been tremendous, but it wasn't actually in this area. So is there really any relevance, I asked myself. And as I looked into myself, I said, well, maybe it's not apparent, but maybe what I have to do is go into some of the copious writings that he had and to see what's there. And so I did. I've decided to take a few concepts that I think are very, very relevant to the understanding of this concept of one humanity and connecting people via the funnel, the prism of Viktor Frankl, who was a psychiatrist, a neurologist, an author, a thinker, a philosopher. I'd also like to talk about briefly a topic related to the Holocaust, and I'll mention that very briefly. I was showing a very, very small section of a clip that I think relates to a topic that I was struggling with here. So I'm going to share my screen. So Viktor Frankl and tolerance in society. Okay, so the key concepts I'd like to touch on here is the first, what's called the existential vacuum, the uniqueness of each individual, what was meant by love, I think, in my estimation, the concept of self-transcendence, but not self-actualization, and I think some of my colleagues will touch upon that as well, and finally, the responsibility, which we heard a lot from Batya right now. When I say Holocaust, I want to mention that I'm doing my PhD now at the age of 63 on reflections of children of Holocaust survivors in the second half of life on their life experience. I am a son of a Holocaust survivor who lost his entire family, except for one sister who died at the age of 100, and she would have been 102 today. I'm using this not to go into depth, but to talk a little about how I struggled with this concept vis-a-vis Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor. So the first is a quote that Viktor Frankl loved to quote from Hillel the Elder, Rabbi Hillel, who lived about 2,000 years ago. And he said, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? But if I'm only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when? In fact, I think his whole approach to man and society can be just in this particular saying, which he loved to talk about, by the way. Let's start by saying Viktor Frankl was first and foremost an existentialist. He was a humanist, not just an existentialist. And what is existentialism? A very difficult concept to define. And believe me, there are all kinds of concepts out there. But I like the one that says it is simply what it means to exist as a human being. It's a philosophical approach to understand our world, everything about what it means to exist. And here is the crux of the matter. It's about us as individuals. And I'm stressing individuals. And that's where I had the problem a bit when I first heard about the topic here. But as being in relation to the others, it's about how we navigate our journeys from birth to death. It's about all that we are and all that we might be. And this is very much Viktor Frankl's logotherapy. And in essence, it's about simply being human. The existential vacuum is a concept that Frankl talked about. And he said, basically, in the modern age, we don't have those things that used to hold us, those macro structures, maybe religion, ideology, political, social order. So what happened is many people simply don't have meaning anymore, kind of a neurosis. And Viktor Frankl says individualism has been rejected in favor of conformity. That means the individual relies mainly upon actions of others and neglects the meaning of his own personal life. And here's where we're talking about the personal life. Viktor Frankl was an existential philosopher who brought meaning as the major function of his approach. He sees his own life, the individual, as meaningless and falls into existential vacuum, the person who has existential vacuum. And eventually, if the person does not have meaning, he goes into those terrible things like alcoholism, delinquency, suicide, and so on. So that's an important point, understanding this concept. And then there's a uniqueness. What a beautiful, beautiful thing Frankl wrote in his 10 Theses about the person, which is available on the Viktor Frankl Institute in Vienna's website. And I'm taking it from there. The person is an individuum. He's indivisible. He is unity. He cannot be split. The person is not only individuum, he's also insoluble. That is to say, he's not divisible. You got to take him. He's a whole being there. And the third point is the most important point, I think. Every single person is absolute novelty. Every person who comes into the world is an absolute novelty. It's brought into being, made a reality. For spiritual existence is non-transferable. A child cannot inherit from parents, but alone can be produced of the building blocks and not the builder. The human being is unique. And there's love. From the book of Man's Search for Meaning, love is the only way to grasp another being, the uttermost core of his personality. And you wonder, why would a philosopher talk so much about love? He didn't talk so much about love, but love was something that's seen in this very, very a larger thing that's enveloping us here. If we don't understand love, we probably won't understand life. And then there's the Maslow pyramid, which you've all seen. And we've seen this in many disciplines here, and it ends up in self-actualization. But the thing is that Maslow, excuse me, 1 second here. So Maslow actually had one level beyond that called self-transcendence. And I don't know if you know that, but he put that in a year or so before he died, 1970 or so, I think it was, or 6970. And he did that, according to Viktor Frankl's grandson, because he talked to Viktor Frankl. He says, self-actualization is not the pinnacle of man's needs. And Frankl said, self-actualization can only fall into your lap automatically once you have fulfilled the concrete meaning. Then you have actualized yourself as a byproduct. He said, it's nonsense to think that self-actualization is the ultimate. Even pleasure and happiness, the side effects of self-transcendence and discovery of meaning. When you focus on meaning and self-transcendence, self-actualization will come, not the other way around. Very often, Schweitzer, he quoted Schweitzer saying, the only ones among you who will really be happy are those who have sought, and I can't see what it says there, and how to serve the other. Okay. And then there's responsibility, which Bata spoke about very nicely here. Frankl said responsibility is the essence of existence. And I read the second point here. Humans have the ability to make decisions and take responsibility for their own lives. Education must be education towards the ability to make decisions, take responsibility, and to become free to be the person you decide to be. So, the Statue of Responsibility, we heard about this quote. I recommend the Statue of Liberty be supplemented on the West Coast to the Statue of Liberty on the East Coast. And there we have it. There's the two statues of liberty and responsibility. But I want to talk now about the Holocaust. And I want to say what I want to talk about in the Holocaust here, because I was to be very honest, when I saw this clip I'm going to show you, that Viktor Frankl spoke in Austria on the commemoration of Anschluss, the day of annexation of Austria in 1938. It's a 12-minute clip, and I'll be showing 3.5 minutes to you, but talking about it just a few minutes here. Viktor Frankl said there is no collective guilt. And he went on and told why he thought that. And I must say, as a son of a Holocaust survivor, as a person who's very deeply involved with the research here, I was very irritated and very offended by what Viktor Frankl said. I said, how can he do that? How can he go ahead and say, you're not responsible if you didn't live there, but you weren't there at the time? And although it made sense rationally, emotionally, it didn't make any sense to me. I must say that I made kind of full circle here, because I will quote to you what Viktor Frankl said and why I feel that in the end, Viktor Frankl was right. And I will take you through parts of the speech that he gave before I will show you an excerpt of the film. So Viktor Frankl spoke on a very cold winter day. He was 83 years old, 1988. And he began by saying, that he's honored to be there, but he wants to remember his mother and brother and father and wife, who were all killed by the Nazis and their collaborators during the Holocaust. And he says, however, I ask you not to expect a single word of hatred from me. Who should I hate? I knew only the victims, but I do not know the perpetrators. At least I do not know them personally. And to blame somebody personally, and to blame someone, not personally, but collectively, is something I totally reject. Collective guilt does not exist. And then he went on to talk about the different people who were saved by Gentiles in Austria, including his cousin, his friend, a good friend who was actually killed because he helped the underground. And I went on to say that, of course, you can say many, many things about what went on there. And you could say that people who lived at the time, even if they didn't do anything, they were responsible in some way. But you cannot hold people responsible for people who were not there. And I think that what Viktor Frankl was trying to say is best said now by the short clip that I'm going to share with you and make a few comments here. So bear with me as I pull up the clip here. I want to make sure that I have the sound on. Hold on a second. Yeah, sound is on. Taking to a moment here. 1 second.
Und wie es dann Tode und sein junges Leben geendet hat unter dem Fallbeil.
I'm sorry, I don't have the subtitles here for some reason. 1 second. That's not the one where. Okay, bear with me 1 second, please.
Aber wenn ich Ihnen verraten darf, wie ich darüber und dass man
All right, 1 second. had done it before. Not this one here. Can you see that? Yeah.
There's a line in the middle.
One second here.
Schicksal zu teilen vorgezogen hat. Und dann sagen die
Okay, here we go. Sorry about that.
der wegen Wehrmachtsversetzung verurteilt wurde zum Tode und sein junges Leben geendet hat unter dem Fallbeil. Meine Damen und Herren, der Nationalsozialismus hat den Rassenwahn aufgebracht. Aber wenn ich Ihnen verraten darf, wie ich darüber denke, dann lautet meine Antwort so: Es gibt eigentlich nur zwei Menschenrassen. Und das ist die Rasse der anständigen Menschen und die Rasse der unanständigen Menschen. Und die Rassentrennung geht quer hindurch durch alle Nationen. Und innerhalb jeder Nation quer hindurch durch alle Parteien und alle Gruppierungen sonstiger Art. Auch in den Konzentrationslagern ist man hier und da, sogar unter der SS, auf den einen oder anderen halbwegs anständigen Kerl gestoßen, genauso wie umgekehrt auf so manchen Verlotten unter den Häftlingen. Gefahr droht ja nur anderswo. Die anständigen Menschen sind in der Minorität. Die anständigen Menschen waren immer eine Minorität und werden, glaube ich, auch immer eine bleiben. Aber die Gefahr liegt ja anderswo. Die Gefahr liegt dort, wo ein Regime, wo ein politisches System die unanständigen Kerle an die Oberfläche schwemmt und mit anderen Worten dafür sorgt, dass die negative Auslese einer Nation ans Ruder kommt. Das ist die eigentliche Gefahr. Aber davor, meine Damen und Herren, ist von vornherein keine einzige Nation gefeit. Und in diesem Sinne wage ich die Behauptung, dass grundsätzlich jede Nation holocaustfähig ist. Und was sind die politischen Konsequenzen, die wir aus alledem ziehen dürfen? Es gibt meines Erachtens nur zwei Stile von Politik. Oder lassen Sie mich sagen, zwei Typen von Politikern. Die einen, das sind diejenigen, die glauben, der Zweck heiligt die Mittel. Jedes Mittel, terroristisches eingeschlossen. Während die anderen Politiker sehr wohl sich dessen bewusst bleiben, dass es Mittel gibt, die selbst den heiligsten Zweck zu entweihen vermöchten. Und dieser Typus von Politikern ist es, den ich es auch zutraue, dass er aus all dem Lärm um diese Märztage heraushört die Stimme der Vernunft und heraushört die Forderung des Tages, oder besser gesagt dieses Gedenktages, und die kann nur lauten, dass alle, die guten Willens sind, endlich einmal die Hände einander entgegenstrecken über alle Gräber und alle Gräben hinweg. Danke.
Nach dieser zutiefst berührenden und wichtigen Rede.
So, in the 2 minutes I have left, I want to comment on that and why I chose to show it here. I think Viktor Frankl was saying something very profound, very difficult to hear for a person, certainly for a person who's a descendant of a family who suffered such losses. But what Viktor Frankl was saying in my mind was that in the end, responsibility is first and foremost individual, and it comes from conscience. And a person can be responsible if he or she did something against conscience and in the end against society. I think it takes a brave man to say what he said, coming from where he came from. He got a lot of flack. And even I was personally very taken back and offended by it. And many other Holocaust survivors were as well. But if you see what Viktor Frankl was saying, and you sense his very consistent way of seeing responsibility and freedom and love and transcendence, you understand where he's coming from. And I think that this conference here, we're talking about one humanity, about beginning and to strengthen the understanding of people as they are and their uniqueness of the individual. We have to understand that responsibility is first and foremost personal. And as we, as logotherapists, and as people teaching logotherapy and talking about logotherapy, we have to remember this. And that's how I hope that we will take from this conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ronnie.
Okay, so switching my hats here, back to my facilitator hat. We are now in the interim stage here. We're going to, let's see, we have 54 people participating here. Wonderful. I'm going to ask you now to take a little 2 minutes and write down in your notebooks next to you. You're not going to share this publicly. What is 1 or 2 points that you've taken from the first 2 talks of today? 1 or 2 talks that you're taking from it. And in the breakout rooms, which I'm going to organize now, we're going to discuss that. So let's take 2 minutes now, and while I arrange the breakout room. Okay, everybody. I'm going to divide you now into breakout rooms of about 5 people. Okay, there may be some 4 or 5. And what I'll ask you to do is when you get there into the breakout rooms, is stick to the point. I wouldn't even, you can introduce your name or something, but don't go into your biography because you'll fill up all the time. And talk about those 1 or 2 points that came up for you in the first talks. Share the knowledge, share the experience. We'll have 20 minutes and I'll bring you back. I will send you messages, how much time we have left. Please divide the time as equally as possible. You're responsible, not me, okay? And make sure everyone is heard and wants to be heard. And we'll bring you back and we'll hear something, what you experienced in the breakout rooms. So enjoy. Yeah, you got to remind us about that. Thank you. Sorry, Batya, go ahead.
Yeah. So, how can you intend for the good of everyone when you're not sure what that is, and you want to make sure you're thinking about your own needs as well. So I think the whole thrust of logotherapy is beyond yourself, is that you're not just focused on yourself. So, you have that humorous story, for example, about the man, the father and the son, and each one is saying, they're cold, and each one's saying, you take the coat, you're older, and no one's saying, no, you take the coat, you're younger, so you need to stay healthy. If each one is thinking about the other, then somehow you end up coming to an answer.
Yeah, reminds me of my kids say, I say sometimes, oh, it's cold in here, why don't you have a jacket on? They say, but I'm not cold, you're cold. You have a jacket, not me. Okay. Thank you, Batya. Gabrielle.
Hey, sorry. Yes, I'm without camera. I'm sorry, I'm in a mess. Yeah, we were too. And this was amazing experience. I felt a lot of connection. I don't know, it was really amazing to share about families, about life experience. And we discussed how human as a species took responsibility, and if they don't took responsibility, how it how it's in English, how it has responsible for the whole globe, like Earth and a lot of fields. So yeah, they talk about that, about the responsibility and about choosing
Right.
what to do.
Yeah. Thank you, Gabrielle. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Erkan, please.
I and Christine Reed, we were in the same room. We talked about the importance of responsibility, how without responsibility we cannot be a truly human being. Only through responsibility, or put very differently, freedom towards another human being, that we can be truly ourselves. And we talked about ideals. One of the core perspectives provided by logotherapy. And we said we don't need big ideals to self-transcend. It can be in our daily lives, trying to give small things to those around us. I mean, we have 2 cats at home. Sometimes I buy them good food to eat.
Yeah.
This is, I mean, and I watch them enjoying their food, and how they want to play with me later on. Even such a small thing,
Right,
is related with self-transcendence, I think.
Yeah. Self-transcendence, it doesn't have to be a big thing. It sounds like a very big word, but it can be something quite simple, you said.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Erkan. Adida, please.
Yeah, I would start by commenting about your little story about your son, that you said you're called, not me. I would say something in terms of objective truth and subjectivity that Viktor Frankl says about this. He gives this image of a cathedral outside the class, and he says to the students, look out the windows and see this cathedral. Is this cathedral really objective? It is objective, but if I would ask you, among all of you in the class, the students, are you all seeing exactly the same? You would be lying if you would say yes, because each one has his own unique perspective and subjective perspective about it. And therefore he uses the term subjective objectivity. So it connects the two. Now I will say just some sentences what came up in our group, and maybe others will want to add. One very strong point was that you should take responsibility no matter what the cost is, like just try and really obey your conscience. And another point that came up was flexibility of rules, like what Batya talked about, according to the situation. That sometimes this is what is called for, that you can understand the rules in a different perspective. And yeah, about the will to meaning, also that you have to obey what is really being called for. And for somebody else, the distinction between the mass and the whole was very important as a teacher, to teach the kids to live by the conscience for the whole. And more and more, but I think I will stop here to let others also talk.
Okay, thank you, Dina. Thank you for those points. Cynthia, yes, Cynthia, unmute, please.
This is
Hello.
a query to, yes, happy to meet you. Query to Bharti, actually. You made the distinction between mass and community. This is something that we discussed in our breakout room. We were just the two of us, me and Oakley. Mass as a collection of people who are not responsible, and community as a collection of people who are responsible, who respect each other, accept each other, respond with love and care. So the one thought that came to my mind is, when we look around, we see more of masses than community. So how am I as a single individual to really bring about a change? So this is what we were sharing, and Oakley made a remarkable response. He said, like Viktor Frankl, we could live like a member of the community within the masses, and maybe there could be slow changes. That was an amazing insight. So then we suddenly realized that the concentration camp were masses of people, and right over there, how he responded. So that's what happened mainly in our group.
Yeah. Thank you, Cynthia.
Yeah, thank you.
Interesting point. Yeah, I don't see any hands. Does that mean there's no comments, questions, or you need a break?
There's a hand.
Okay, yes, Donald. Donald, please unmute. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Ronnie. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Okay, thank you, thank you. I'm interested in the point presented by Batya about freedom. Freedom from and freedom to. I think also it's related to Ronnie's point about responsibility. Even though I don't understand enough about freedom and responsibility, freedom from and freedom to, but I think this topic is very relevant to my life. As a father, as a student, I am a father who tries freedom to be human, by being responsible with myself, with my life, my role as a father, as a teacher, and also responsible to another people. So this point is very relevant to my life.
Yeah.
I think. Thank you.
Do you want Batya to say something about the difference between freedom from and freedom to, or you're just commenting, or do you have a question?
Yes, if Batya could explain about freedom from and freedom to, I am very happy about it.
Sure, thank you, Donald. Batya, can you do that in 2 minutes?
Okay, so freedom from is when you are free from the forces, external and internal, that are pushing you to not be free, to do something that doesn't come from within you. And then the freedom to is to be able to do what? What is the freedom for? Right? To be able to make changes in yourself, change the way you're relating to the other people, think about the consequences.
So freedom to come from myself.
Yeah, but the freedom from can be freedom from yourself also. It can be freedom from your impulsivity and your addictions and things like that. or freedom from, from the people who are trying to push you in one way or another, right? But the freedom too is to do what? It's like fill in the blank. What do you want to be free to be able to do?
Okay, I got it point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well said. Okay. Let's see if there are any questions or comments. Raise your hand, and if not, give a moment here. Okay. So let us take now. Oh, you have a question, Mark? Yeah, go ahead.
Actually, Ronnie, I was just going to remind everyone that there is an evaluation and interest form. Sorry, everyone, I'm Mark Lane Holbert. I'm here in the University of South Florida in Tampa, Florida, and I'm an educational psychologist and have been involved with one of our committees on the Global Logotherapy Initiative. So the interest form actually is combined with the evaluation form for this conference. So we would love for you to give us some feedback. And also, if you are interested in supporting one of the committees or even helping to start a new committee, if there's another area that you're interested in or adding to what we've already thought about, we would love to have that. So I put the link in the chat there, and it gives you a means to connect. We'll be sharing with you by email or by WhatsApp. We have WhatsApp groups. If you're able to do that via your cell phone, that's also a great way to stay connected with our Global Logotherapy Initiative. And yeah, thanks again. Appreciate it.
I just had a comment before we take a break here. So this whole Global Logotherapy Initiative is really very much a grassroots type of thing. It hasn't been organized from the institutes down, but from the practitioners interested up, which means we have a little bit of chaos. Everyone's doing their own thing, which is good. It's creative, it's co-creative. And so we actually look forward to people saying, listen, I'm interested in this idea. Who wants to do it with me? And that's how we arrange things. So if you're that kind of person, if you're looking to do something co-creative and out of the box, well, just contact us through what Mark said. And we'd certainly love to have you because, as I said, it's a grassroots from the bottom up type of initiative to get logotherapy message out there, to get connected with people, to change ideas, and to create a better universe. And that's what we're all about here. So I think now let's take a break, okay? We'll be off back in 15 minutes. So wherever you are in the world, and we're all over the world here, look at your watches. 15 minutes, be back here. I'll be playing some music in the background so you'll know you're back. And then when the music is off, then we'll be back here again. See you all in 15 minutes. Don't disconnect from the session. Just put yourself on mute and or the video on mute, and see you in 15 minutes. Thank you. Right. Let anyone come, give another minute for everyone to come back. Before I get started, so we will have a presentation now from Erkan, Dr. Erkan Kalim, and then we'll go over to a presentation by Sarah. Afterwards, we'll have the same type of thing, a kind of a reflection journal for about a minute or two, and then we'll go into a breakout room again, shorter time, and then we'll have a presentation by Nino, who will wrap it up in a final group discussion and kind of sign out for today. So I think we can get started now, Erkan.
Okay.
Why don't you just start by introducing yourself, and then take it away.
Okay, thank you, Ronnie. Let me start sharing my presentation. Okay. I am Erkan Kalem. I am from Istanbul, Turkey. I am a clinical psychologist.
Erkan, do you want to put it into the presentation mode?
Now it is in presentation mode. I see my presentation. Let me stop it and start again.
Yeah.
Do you see it now?
Oh. What happened there? Hold on.
I see it on my screen.
I think you have to press the button on the bottom, the one next to the 130%. You see that one next to it? I think that's the one that'll give you presentation mode.
So let's do.
Let's try it again. If not, we can just use the other way. Yeah.
Do you see it now?
We always see it, Erkan, but I think what Ronnie means is that it can be bigger.
Yeah.
Without seeing
Okay.
So on the
without
bottom,
seeing the side slide.
the icon. All right, whatever is good for you.
Can you see it now?
Yeah,
It's okay.
It's also bigger. It's okay.
Okay. Okay. I'm a clinical psychologist and a logotherapist since 2016. I work in Istanbul. I am also one of the co-founders of Value Istanbul Logotherapy Institute. Today, I will be talking about a Jewish French philosopher, Emmanuel Levinas, whose philosophy seems very much reflecting Viktor Frankl's ideas. The title of my presentation is Face to Face with Another Person, Understanding Viktor Frankl through Emmanuel Levinas. I will give a brief presentation of some of the basic ideas of Viktor Frankl that inspired me to read Emmanuel Levinas. I will continue with a brief biography of Levinas and then present his philosophy related with some of the basic ideas of Viktor Frankl. Frankl proposed a three-dimensional ontology which includes somatogenic, psychogenic, and neurogenic dimensions. According to Frankl, the neurogenic dimension has two functions, self-distancing and self-transcendence. Self-distancing means to put a distance between myself and my story and actions. Self-transcendence means to go beyond myself and to move towards another person or a future goal. What takes place in me when I move towards another person, when I am face to face with another person? Emmanuel Levinas's philosophy tries to explain what takes place in us during those moments of an encounter with another person. Levinas's philosophy gives us clues about what Frankl might have implied with his concept of self-transcendence. In this presentation, I will try to summarize Levinas's ideas about our encounter with another human being. Emanuel Levinas was born in 1906 in the present-day Lithuania. Due to the World War I, his family moved to Ukraine in 1916, returning back to Lithuania in 1920. Levinas's early education was in secular Russian language schools. In Lithuania, Levinas spent 2 years at a Jewish gymnasium. He went to France in 1923 and began his philosophical studies at the University of Strasbourg in 1923. In 1928, he visited the University of Freiburg to study phenomenology under Edmund Husserl. At Freiburg, he also met Martin Heidegger. Levinas became a naturalized French citizen in 1939. During the World War II, he served as an officer in the French army. When the Germans invaded France in 1940, his military unit was forced to surrender, and Levinas spent the rest of the war as a war prisoner in a work camp in Germany. The notes that he took during those years were later developed into his book, From Existence to Existence, 1947, and a series of lectures published under the title Time and Other, 1948. While he was a war prisoner, his friend Maurice Blanche helped Levinas's wife and daughter spend the war in a monastery, saving their lives. Other members of Levinas's family were killed during the wartime. His mother-in-law was deported and never heard from again, while his father and 2 brothers were killed in Lithuania by the Nazis. After the Second World War, Levinas taught at a private Jewish high school in Paris. He began teaching in several universities after 1961, and he retired from Sorbonne in 1979. He died in 1905 in France. Levinas explicitly frames his mature philosophical works, Totality and Infinity, 1961, and Otherwise Than Being or Beyond Essence, 1974, as attempts to respond to Heidegger's philosophy in light of its ethical failings. Levinas's philosophy. Levinas's philosophy is a kind of manifesto against the Western philosophy. Levinas talks about one particular main idea, the encounter with the other. Levinas uses Husserl's phenomenological approach as his context, which is very different from the traditional Western thought. In the traditional Western thought, the subject has become the center of the universe and the creator of all meaning in the world. This attitude politically led to colonization. The colonizer has become the center of meaning, of truth, of science, of knowledge. Levinas was very disturbed with that idea of a subject as the creator of all meaning in the world. For Levinas, the other cannot be subsumed to what the self says the other is. For Husserl, we wouldn't even be conscious. For Husserl, we wouldn't even be conscious if the object wasn't there. The mind becomes active through its interaction with the impressions of the outside world. The object awakens us, and then we give meaning to the object. It's not just me deciding what everything is. It is the outside world which inspires me, awakens me. Levinas builds on that. He thinks within this framework when it comes to one particular object in the world, the human being. For Husserl, consciousness is intentional. All consciousness is consciousness of something or someone. We don't exist without the world around us. We are not distinct from the world. Our consciousness is not sitting here and the world is there. Our consciousness is already engaged in the world, in touch with it. In fact, it is the world which awakens our consciousness. This is a crucial point when another human being enters into the scene. For Levinas, we are already always in touch with the human other. We are already always a part of the other, and the other is a part of us. Intentionality is simply the fact that our consciousness is always intending, connected, going outside, moving beyond itself towards another. Our subjectivity always moves beyond itself. To be a subject is to be constantly moving beyond oneself. In an encounter with another person, the other manifests himself in the face, through his face. Levinas says that the face of a human being always pierces any form that we put upon them, any stereotype, category, or expectation. Levinas talks about the nakedness of the face. Nakedness means the true self, outside of any type of a cover. The face actually not only pierces, but reveals the other. The other constantly moves towards us and tells us about himself. Beyond the other piercing all my expectations via the nakedness of his face, there is one more thing the other does. He enters my world, forces his way into my world. For Levinas, the other always transgresses. He infiltrates my comfortable world, makes a visitation. Visitation is intrusion. The other visits us, consistently interrupts us through their way of being. The other interrupts our view of them. He interrupts the cozy world we live in. Why can't the others in our lives just stay there and be normal and not interrupt us? Because the normal is interruption. Levinas says that it is in the nature of the other to interrupt us. It is in the nature to destabilize our complacency, to pierce through our categorizations. The other inflicts his presence on us. This is the essence of the encounter with another. Encounter with a homeless, a poor, a refugee, someone in need who wants our time, attention, care, is the encounter with the ultimate other. This is what Levinas calls the visitation. For Levinas, at that moment, we are already responsible, that is, responsible. We have been called to respond. The other has already chosen it for us. For Levinas, we are never free when the other visits us. We are being called to do something for the other. That's what Levinas means by being responsible or responsible. We have been called to give a response to that vulnerable other. The other has already made the choice for us, asking us to respond to him. The other determines for us what we should do. The other has visited us and we are called to respond or to be responsible. At that moment, we can decide whether to respond or not. Levinas does not tell us what to do. He just says that at that moment, we have a choice to respond or not. For Levinas, to respond to that other is to become awakened. I become awakened as a consciousness through the contact with the other. Levinas is giving us an incentive to respond. He's saying that if we respond, we are allowing ourselves to be awakened. If we do not respond, we are going back into the prison of ourself. Here, responding is responding to the other's needs. When we choose to ignore the presence of the other, Levinas says that we are missing the awakening. To respond is to remain in the awakened state. To refuse to respond is to fall back into slumber and become numb. To say that the other awakens us means that the other brings us back to our full selfhood. If we ignore the other, we remain as a stunted version of ourselves. Levinas says it is important to respond because we become awakened. What matters is to be awake in this world, to walk around awake, sensitive, aware, and not become numb and desensitized and locked up. When we become numb, stop seeing and hearing what is happening around us, this gives rise to the violence of human beings to other beings. When everyone becomes numb, that's when atrocities begin to take place. For Levinas, to be my true self means being unable to escape from responsibility. The other is the agent that awakens my true self through its call. The responsibility to respond to the other empties the ego of its egoism. As I am being emptied, as I am moving beyond egoism, I enter into my true, unique self. At the moment the other calls us, we are called into our true self. Levinas talks about infinite responsibility. He says we are actually infinitely responsible to the other who calls us. For Levinas, we cannot reduce our responsibility to the calling of the other. Since we have the power to change that person's life completely, we need to remain with the moral weight of this knowledge. We have to continue to hear the voice of this responsibility, and we need to carry it with courage. Otherwise, we become desensitized. If we shut that voice down, we will create the conditions for more violence. We won't be able to respond when violence comes too close because we won't see and hear it. Sorry. I'm sorry, I lost. Okay. The way I respond to the other is what creates the connection. If I am responding from my own being to the other, at that moment, intimacy is possible. Connection is created through this embodied response of giving a part of ourselves to the other in need. However, in the encounter with the other can hurt us, ruin us. Levinas says that anytime another ruins us, it is actually a prelude to a new beginning. Out of the ruins, the true self emerges. For Levinas, the self is too small, too focused on itself. The self needs to break open towards the other so that it can find its true destiny. Inevitably, the other people in our lives will cause to some trauma and rupture ourself, and then the self can expand itself, can become more. The other, through its violation, challenges the self to expand itself. For Levinas, morality cannot occur in a vacuum. Somebody from the outside has to awaken the moral sense in us. The other who pushes us and moves us to a response to their pain, anger, frustration, or need is the other who awakens us. It is the other who awakens our moral sense by calling upon us. At that moment, when the other calling me to respond to him, I have a choice to respond to become a moral being. The face of the other chooses us, elects us, commands us to become a moral being. But isn't this servitude? This not being able to get out of responsibility. We don't even have a choice whether we are responsible or not. This sounds like there is an enslavement of the self by the other. In Levinas's philosophy, where is the free will? Are we just at the mercy of the other, whatever the other asks us to do? For Levinas, the enslaving character of responsibility is cancelled by the bounty of the good that commands us. What does the bounty of the good mean? It is the good in the sense of the higher good, or the good in the Platonic sense. The good resides in each one of us, and we need to protect this good in each one of us through our actions. What do we get from the interaction in which we respond to the other person? For Levinas, through our responses to the other, we gain in terms of our awakening, our expansion, our becoming a true human subject. The seed of the self breaks, and we emerge as our true self. Levinas's philosophy is an invitation to respond to the other. His philosophy is not prescriptive. He does not tell us what to do. He says that the more we respond, the more we receive in terms of being a human being. In the spiritual realm of human interaction, the more I give, the more I have. Conclusion. Levinas shows us that we need the presence of another human being, not only to transcend ourselves, but also to expand ourselves. When I am face to face with another person, the other person calls me to respond to him. And to respond to the other person, I have to expand my experience of myself. At this point, the first function of the neogenic dimension is activated. I have to distance myself from my story and actions in order to have a deeper understanding of my story and actions. And this self-distancing brings a greater awareness of myself, expanding the limits of myself. Self-transcendence and self-distancing happen simultaneously, enriching each other. Thank you listening to me.
Thank you.
That's
Thank
all
you,
I have to
Erkan.
say.
Erkan, thank you very much for a very erudite, scholarly, enlightening presentation. I'd like to make two comments, if I may. We have a couple of minutes here. One is, isn't it amazing that Levinas and Franco lived about the same years? They died about the same years, they lived the same years. They had very much similarities in their experiences.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And yet I'm wondering if you could sum up in a very short few sentences Why did you choose this topic to present? And what do you see is the similarities and differences between Levinas and Frankl vis-a-vis what you wanted to talk about?
It has been a challenge since the beginning of my training to understand the neogenic dimension. What does exactly self-transcendence means, or self-distancing means, how they are related. I knew Emmanuel Levinas actually, but just read about him few pages, not more. I knew his ideas about the human face. What pushed me towards him was one day, I have a son, 15 years old. I did something and he was very much hurt. He came into my room with tearful eyes, and he tried to explain to me what he was experiencing. Looking at his face, I had to respond to him with the best self I had. I could not do otherwise. Then I started reading Levinas, really. Yes, Frankl and Levinas lived during the same time. They have gone through the same experience. Both suffered a lot. Both lost their families. Two different stories, two different minds, but taught about the same things almost, with two different vocabulary. It is, I mean, for the last 2, 3, 4 months, I have been reading about him. The more I read, the more I feel close to Levinas, and I see the deep, I realize this is one of my interests, to understand the roots of Frankl's concepts, using philosophers lived before him, living at the same time with him.
Yeah.
I think Levinas is a major source for us to understand Frankl.
Okay, thank you, Erkan. I want to invite you to, why don't you write an article about Frankl and Levinas together?
In future, I hope I will do it. An American scholar, university teacher, Abi Doğukan, who has a book on Emmanuel Levinas, has inspired me a lot in preparing this presentation. I hope in the coming years I will be more knowledgeable about Levinas and will write.
Okay, thank you, Erkan. Thank you very much. We have to go on, and thank you. Okay, I'd like to invite Sarah to unmute. You're unmuted, and tell us about yourself first, and give us your presentation.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Sarah Lynn. It's a joy and an honor to be here today with you and to share this with you. I am very much of a seeker. And at the time, you know, I was 23 when I felt such a strong pull toward another life and such a curiosity. And I didn't know what was wrong with me. It was before I read Viktor Frankl. It was before I studied logotherapy. And I chose to leave Germany at the time, hoping I could learn from other cultures, hoping I could find whatever meaning was out there for me in the world. And so I did. So my search for meaning very much turned into a journey around the world. And that's what happened. I got to learn from amazing mentors from various cultures. And that led me to becoming first a teacher of mindfulness and emotional intelligence, and then now to studying logotherapy. Now, this topic, rediscovering your inner compass, is something that I am personally very excited about. And it's just meaningful to me as I, work with my clients, as I listen to my friends and my family. And so often I feel like we struggle with listening to ourselves, or the divine, as we will see in the next 20 minutes within ourselves. So I want to take you on an inner journey to more direction and meaning. But before we start, because I'm sure you've had a really busy day and we've heard so much inspiring things so far in this conference, I would invite all of us to take a moment to settle the mind. Now you can just follow my guidance. If you feel comfortable, please close your eyes. If not, that's totally fine. You can just gently lower your gaze. And as we do that, check in with your body first. Notice how you're sitting, if you want to make any adjustments to feel more relaxed or more alert. And then all together, we're coming together from various parts of the world, and it's such a beautiful thing. Let's take a deep, conscious breath in together. Noticing our lungs expand. Maybe letting something go with the exhalation, releasing some stress, some tension. And remembering that our breath is always in the present moment. It's such a beautiful portal to the here and now and everything that is present in the here and now. So to listen inward, we can use the breath as a doorway. Also noticing that our mind will wander because that's in the nature of our mind, and that's okay. But we can always come back to the next deep breath and the next and the next. Wonderful, thank you. With the sound of the bell, I invite us all to bring our attention back to our shared space. If that feels good to you, please stretch. Sometimes our bodies become a little tired when we give them a break. So please do that if that feels good to you. So the choices we take, right? I often, observe myself, and I love to observe other people. And I wonder, from which place do we take choices, the small ones and the big ones? And moment to moment, they matter, because then if we look back, they create our life story. They create our life journey. So it's so easy in this crazy VUCA world. It's originally a term from the military to describe a war zone. But if we look at the terms, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, they apply to all of our lives, right? Nowadays, so with the state of technology and smartphones and social media, we live in a pretty crazy world. And it can be hard to take choices from the inner wisdom that are authentic to us. And that often leads us to experiencing existential crisis, confusion, or meaning vacuums. And in this VUCA world, we often are sold or conditioned with the idea that we find the answers outside of us. That there's someone who saves us, or someone who can fix it, or a product we can buy. And the concept of conscience that we can learn from logotherapy is so meaningful, so important, because it really teaches us what we can do about this. And the solution lies within us. So if we are in this distracted autopilot state of mind, it's really hard to connect to it. And that's why, for me, it's a thesis I wrote about mindfulness, emotional intelligence, and conscience and logotherapy. And it made so much sense to me. I had a big aha moment when I realized mindfulness is the art and the practice that trains our awareness. it opens the door for us to connect to our inner knowing, to our inner wisdom. And so as we practice being more present, just as we did together a few moments ago, we can cultivate more clarity. We can step out of the mental fog and the distraction and everything that is going on to self-distance, to observe, understand we're not our mind, we're not our emotions or our physical body. We're something much deeper, much more eternal that can observe all of that dynamic, all of that movement. And as we do that, we gain more insight, we gain more clarity. It's like turning a camera inside and then we'll learn to adjust it, you know, and all of a sudden there's more contrast, there's more clarity. And if we go through the world with more clarity, we will be more aware of when life addresses us. You know, what Batya was also talking about before, and talking about conscience. So this is kind of the step of how to do that, actually. Theresa Chantal calls it an awareness of being addressed. That's what conscience and logotherapy is. But what if we don't cultivate that awareness? It's going to be really hard to listen and realize that we are being called upon in a very personal, unique way to realize meaning in the moment. So that's kind of how I imagine it, right? Like we carry this, I almost imagine like a radio inside of us. We carry this receptivity inside of us. And if we listen and if we hone it, we can pick up on the voice of the transcendent, of God, of the universe, whatever resonates with you, because it sounds through to us. And that's our inner voice of conscience. In other words, God's voice speaks to the human heart. And that listening, that receptivity that we can develop is the first step. But then what do we do? Because listening is the first step, listening and awareness. But the voice is not exactly communicating with us, you know, in English or in German. It communicates with us in a different way. And that's why we need to reflect upon it. We need to interpret it. We need to discover the meaning and really embrace it. So it takes that inner dialogue. And that then, as good as we can figure out, you know, what am I called to do here? Then we can choose a response. Then we can step into personal responsibility and realize, okay, I'm being called upon here to do something. And my intention is that each and every one of you, you know, walks away from those 20 minutes I have with you with something meaningful. And so I would ask all of you to pull out paper and pen, and we'll take a few moments to journal. Sometimes it's helpful to write down the question and then just continue writing, because it kind of gets you into the writing mode, right? And really ask yourself, like, drop this question into your awareness. What is the voice of conscience asking of me right now? Remembering that it can be ever so small. It doesn't need to be a very big, heroic thing. Trying to listen inward and see what comes up for you. Maybe you surprise yourself. So I'm going to take the time, and we'll have about 2 minutes to answer to that question. So let's go. All right. If you feel like you want to write more about it, please, you can continue this exercise at any time. Personally, I feel like this question never grows old. It's good to ask ourselves that as often as we can. And I just want to share a personal story with you. About 2 years ago, I was already living in Lisbon, Portugal, where I live right now. The daughter of my parents' neighbor, she was 15 at the time, contacted me and asked me if she could come visit me. Now, I knew her, but we didn't exactly have a friendship. And my first reaction was like, okay, this is going to be a lot like time investment, and a 15-year-old, what does it mean? You know, will she go partying and I need to be scared? But then I listened deeply and I realized that I was called upon to do something here. She was making a request and I knew she wanted to, you know, expand and wanted to travel. And I realized I could be a safe experience of showing her how to travel, how to begin being a traveler. And so I said yes to it. And it turned out it was such a wonderful experience. And she helped me even move to another apartment. And it was just such a meaningful experience, really. And I know that if I wouldn't have had that awareness, and if I wouldn't have asked myself, what is the voice of conscious asking of me right now? I would have said no, just out of, I don't know, laziness, ignorance, or just not reflection. And so really asking ourselves that question changes the way we make decisions. It changes our choices and it helps us make choices from a much deeper, more wise and clear place. So thank you for doing this exercise with me. Now, to go a little bit deeper, in the concept of conscience and logotherapy, there are 3 really important elements. And the first one is called ought to be. And it means that we're becoming aware of a possibility when we listen to our conscience. It's something that often isn't real yet. We are being called upon in a very personal way to realize something, to realize a possibility and turn it into something that is happening in reality. And the second one, which is really connected to the first one, is responsibility. You know, we can listen and being aware that we are called upon to do something, but if we are not willing and courageous enough to take responsibility and say yes to that, saying yes to that opportunity to make the world a little bit of a better place, we'll probably not follow through. So we need to really tap into that personal responsibility if we're called upon. And the last one, which will help us tap into personal responsibility, is the what for. It's the question and the answer that we find, a very unique answer to each and every one of us, that is so meaningful that it helps us transcend the suffering, the pain, the fear. What for am I doing this? What for am I willing to support someone else? What for is it worthwhile saying yes to this challenge? So these 3 ought to be responsibility and what for are really important for us if we want to understand the concept of conscience better. And Viktor Frankl said this: conscience is the perception of meaning as I see it, and it could be defined as suddenly becoming aware of a possibility against the background of reality. So just to highlight that again, like this, the power of awareness, it's such a fascinating thing. And we need to hone our awareness, sharpen our awareness, and kind of walk through the world with an open eyes and an open heart to be able to listen to the voice of conscience and to follow through with it. Now, Turiya Chantal said something that just every time I read it, just makes my heart beat a little faster and a little stronger. And for me, it's really what it means to want to be a meaningful part of the mosaic of the collective, while also honoring our individuality and our uniqueness. And she said, I want to be in vital touch with myself and what I stand for. I want to be out there making a difference, making my own and meaningful mark on the world. I want to play my part. Thank you all for your attention, for being here. And I'm just so excited for, the community of logotherapy coming together and spreading the world and just growing. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Sarah. Maybe you can just take off the screen here. Right. Sarah, I wanted to say very briefly, as before we go on to the next activity, is that what you have brought to us here is a very interesting connection between mindfulness, awareness, conscience, logotherapy. Actually, I remember hearing Professor Alexander Batani of the Viktor Frankl Institute in Vienna talking about the idea of mindfulness and how it interrelates with logotherapy. So I think that is an area where you can probably contribute very much, and maybe part of our international community can look at that as well. So
thank you. Thank you.
I think it was wonderful and very, very well appreciated, and I enjoyed the journaling too. Okay.
Thank you so much.
So thank you, Sarah. What we're going to do now is round two. We're going to ask you to take a moment or two to write a point or two that you heard over the last two presentations, Erkan and Sarah's, and something that resonated with you very much, something that you taking from those two, one of those two presentations. We're going to go into breakout rooms and to discuss it. So while you do that, I'll put you into breakout rooms. Okay, so I will be putting you into breakout rooms. Let's hope it works. Every so often I see people who are not connected to a breakout room, but we'll do so. Welcome back, everybody. Recording, thank you. Thank you, recording. I hope you enjoyed a nice breakout room and some of the major points that you discussed there. We won't discuss it right now because we're going to move into our last presentation of Nino, and then we'll go and have a kind of a general discussion with the time left and wrap up the events of today. So Nino, please take it away and introduce yourself and give us your presentation.
Hello, everyone. So, dear colleagues, respectful audience, I'm glad to welcome you today and see all these interested people from all over the globe. The One Humanity starts from now, from the intention to share and respect, recognition of dignity and uniqueness, receptivity, responsibility, and equality. My name is Nino Berzenishvili. I am the founder and director of the Caucasus Association of Logotherapy and Existential Analysis, which officially covers Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Ukraine. Logotherapist, clinical psychologist, and professional coach. It's a privilege that my idea and our association's initiative is supported by colleagues worldwide. We suggested to announce our Logotherapeutic, the One Humanity Days, in connection to the United Nations International Day of Tolerance, promoted to cultivate respect and appreciation of the rich variety of our world's cultures, our forms of expression, and ways of being human. We also look to the Viktor Frankl Center, Vienna, and exhibition The One Humanity, Monanthropism, according to Viktor Frankl. I hope that these 2 meaningful days spent in reflection, transcendence, and togetherness with each other, and 12 speakers from different countries and cultures will be full of insights, values, and incense for a better tomorrow we can build together. When we are now able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves, wrote Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning. From the very beginning of the world till today, looking at historical events and twists, we can observe how humanity as a whole and each person in particular in the course of life fights on 2 battlefields, internal and external. For each time and person, these circumstances are sometimes different, sometimes the same. We appreciate Viktor Frankl not only for his achievements in the field of psychotherapy, but also for the fact that he clearly, by his own example, demonstrated all these postulates and philosophical foundations of logotherapy, became a role model for many, a guide in the search for meaning. Viktor Frankl said, psychoanalysis speaks of the principle of pleasure, individual psychology of the desire for status. But where is that what is most deeply spiritual in man? Where is the innate desire of man to give his life as much meaning as possible, to actualize as many values as possible? Where is that which I would call the will to meaning? The central concept of logotherapy is the meaning in life. According to Frankl, the desire to find meaning in life is the main motivational force of a person. The desire for meaning is a self-sufficient motivation that is neither an expression nor a product of other needs. A person strives to find meaning and feels frustration or vacuum if this desire remains unfulfilled. Frank believed that there is a meaning for everyone, and for everyone it is special. The meaning changes from situation to situation, from person to person. According to Frankl, there is always a meaning that can and must be realized by a particular person. It is not the person who asks the question about the meaning of life, but life itself poses this question to him. Meaning appears to a person as an imperative that requires its implementation, not in words, but in action. The role of meaning is realized by value semantic universals. Viktor Frankl identifies 3 types of such values, 3 semantic systems. The values of creativity, what we carry out or give the world as our creations, the values of experience, what we take from the world in the form of encounters and experiences, and the values of attitude, our position in relation to suffering, in relation to the fate that we cannot change. Speaking of 2 battlefields that a person enters from birth and that change throughout life, a person must understand who he is as a human being, what opportunities and resources he has, what he exists for, and what guides him this way. A person that inner freedom, thanks to which he can change his attitudes towards the conditions of his life and towards himself. Viktor Frankl writes that man is a being who can always say no to his inclinations. Man is least of all a product of heredity and environment. Man is a being who, along with the desire for pleasure, irresistibly strives for values. Man is more than a psyche. Man is a spirit. Man is a being conditioned but never determined, either by his inclinations or by his heredity, or by the factors and circumstances, the external environment. Moreover, due to the presence of the spiritual dimension and accordingly the ability to self-transcend, a person can never be fully predicted. Internal battlefields are the crises caused by age, life circumstances, and existential problems. External crises, external traumatic events act as a stressor in them, are extreme crisis situations that have a powerful negative consequence, situation of threat to one's life or that of significant loved ones, disaster, pandemics, wars. A crisis is always disintegration, but it offers two possibilities. Positive, when a person increases the level of his integrity, or negative, when he becomes a pain to himself and for society. From what choice he makes, his entire subsequent life is affected. But how can we become freer in the course of the changes in our world during economic, financial, migration crisis, widespread wars? Of course, all this can significantly affect our sense of life, but in the end, these factors are not decisive for our joys and sorrows. What then? It's not about what my past was like or what my present looks like, but about how I interpret them and how I understand them, whether I'm ready to search for meaning today. I'm ready to constantly be the one who decides for myself. Am I the owner of my own house, no matter what happens? Michelangelo once said, "When I see a block of marble in a quarry, I look at it and ask, what figure should I release from you?" At first, the artist saw only marble, which, as we know, is hard in a structure. Human life can be tough too. So we can ask the same question in terms of constant change. Finding hard times depressing or complaining about them is understandable, but to accept these times as a challenge and shape them into best can turn life into a work of art. Almost every crisis is a painful state of the soul, which does not feel its meaning enough and therefore wants life to be filled with it. It is the expression of an unlived life that is waiting to be lived. In every crisis, a person can realize that he is more than his problem. There are individual and collective positions that can bring one to crisis. Forced desire to avoid something, forced self-reflection, forced desire to get something, and forced fight with something. Among the collective positions are fanatism, collectivism, fatalism, and the concept of temporary capture. Fanatism denies personality in others. Nobody should suppress them. They don't want to listen to anyone but themselves. In fact, they don't have their own opinion. They simply express a common point of view. Fanatics are increasingly politicizing people, while real politicians must become more and more humanized. Collectivism, the practice of principle of giving a group priority over each individual in it. There is no individuality, different opinion, or unique personality. The crowd suppresses the freedom of the individuals and levels the personality. Fatalists see themselves as a plaything of external circumstances or internal conditions and therefore allows themselves to be controlled. They don't manage themselves, but only find the blame for this or that in accordance with the teaching of modern nihilism. Nihilism holds before them a distorting mirror, distorting images, as a result of which they present themselves as either a mental mechanism or simply a product of the economic system. The concept of temporary capture shows that modern man lives fleetingly day by day and does not understand what he is losing in doing so. He also does not realize the truth of the words spoken by Bismarck. In life, we treat many things as a visit to the dentist. We always believe that something real has yet to happen. In the meantime, it is already happening. Viktor Frankl also called attention to the three major societal illnesses: aggression, addiction, and depression. He termed these problems the mass neurotic triad, a kind of psychological access of evil in today's environment. Significantly, this triad comprises more than targets for psychiatric or psychotherapeutic intervention. The mass neurotic triad is symptomatic for a contemporary world that is missing something. Indeed, something vitally important about the nature of human existence itself. To Dr. Frankl, the problems of aggression, addiction, and depression could be traced in large part to an existential vacuum, or perception that one's life, including one's work life, appeared to be meaningless. He observed that the existential vacuum was a widespread phenomenon of the 20th century and underscored that these conditions were not truly understandable, let alone treatable, unless the existential vacuum underlying them was recognized. Unfortunately, nowadays, in the 21st century, this triad enslaved the world with renewed forces. The persistence of the mass neurotic triad in the 21st century suggests, as I mentioned earlier, that we're facing a crisis of meaning that will not go away on its own, or will it disappear solely through the pursuit of power, a correlate of aggression, or the pursuit of pleasure, a correlate of addiction. But where there is a crisis, there is also an opportunity. Hence, a crisis of meaning is also a call for meaning in our personal lives, in our work, and even in our public policies. In the midst of the personal and collective suffering that surrounds us, and as we confront this critical and pivotal time in world's history, there is still hope for a better, more meaningful future for all. And let me finish by reminding you the words of Viktor Frankl. The way in which a man accepts his fate and all the suffering entails, the way in which he takes up his cross, give the ample opportunity, even under the most difficult circumstances, to add a deeper meaning to his life. It may remain brave, dignified, and unselfish, or in the better fight for self-preservation, he may forget his human dignity and become no more than an animal. Here lies the chance for the man either to make use or to forego the opportunities of attaining the moral values that a difficult situation may afford him. And this decides whether he is worthy of suffering or not. A human being is not one thing among others. He's determine each other, but man is ultimately self-determining. What he becomes within the limits of endowment and environment he has made out of himself. In the concentration camps, for example, in this living laboratory or this testing ground, we watched and witnessed some of our comrades behave like swine, while others behaved like saints. Man has both potentials within himself. Which one is actualized depends on decisions, but not on conditions. And here is my question for yourself or group reflection. What is the key that brings out from inner and external concentration camps? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nino. That was very interesting. And I wanted to make two comments on that with the time we have here. One is you made a comment that a person is more than his problem. Now, it sounds like a very simple statement. How profound it is. I mean, when we have problems, we are usually totally involved with the problem, and we forget that the person is bigger than the problem. I thought that was well put. I wanted to ask you about the title of your presentation, and it was The Way Out from the Inner and External Concentration Camp. And obviously the metaphor is understood, but the self-reflection question you just said now is what I wanted to ask you anyway. So when you say the way out of the inner concentration camp, can I ask that, what is that for you?
Thank you for this question. I will surely answer on this question, but this question is first to our group, and I will answer you after that.
Okay, fine. Very good then. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
What I'd like to do now is, in this last half hour, the first thing I'd like to do before we have a group discussion, we should have done this at the beginning. Why don't you all put in the chat where you're calling from? Because we don't even know. A lot of people have left already, so we don't have everybody. Just say in the chat what country you're calling from, just to be interesting to note who is here. So I'll do that too. So we have Turkey, California. I heard that country, California. Israel, Spain, Indonesia, Portugal, Switzerland, Brazil, Vermont, Germany, Spain, UK, Indonesia, Finland. Wow.
Wow, really amazing.
Really amazing group. And I just have you know, before we open up the discussion here, that we had no idea who was going to show up. And we didn't have an idea who's going to show up, from what countries, and whether or not they have background in logotherapy. And it's so interesting to see that people have just kind of been attracted to this. They're attracted to what they see, and we really appreciate everyone that's here. Okay, thank you for that. Of course, Georgia, yes. We'd like to ask you here now, to summarize what we did today is too much. I mean, we had 5 presentations. Every one of the presenters did not know what the other presenter was presenting. We had absolutely no coordination. And I would think you would agree with me that there was very little duplication. Of course, duplication in some ideas, but everyone had their own perspective. Everyone had their own idea of what they were saying. And isn't this what it's all about? That we're living in humanity, we live in different countries and cultures, we see the same concept, and we understand them a little bit differently. That's the beauty of coming together here. So the time left over, I would like to ask you now to make any comments you have about a question you may have had, an insight you may have had, or something that you want to request. And please, we'd like to hear from people who haven't spoken yet. We have about 15 minutes for this, so let's do it. So who would like to begin? Just raise your hand, or your, it's called the carbon hand, whatever it's called. Okay. Hidayat, I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you to say something. Because you're calling from Australia, it's in the middle of the night there now, and you've been there all the time. So Hidayat, since you're in the middle of the night, why don't you unmute and say a few comments that you want to say here?
Oh, it's beautiful, hearing, different perspectives, all around. So I'm taking notes a lot. So, I mean, what I'd like to say is, one humanity, and especially in the last presentation, we are no longer able to change a situation, but we are challenged to change ourselves. That's quite profound, because in many cases, because we try to change the situation, but rather than ourselves. And also external and internal concentration camp. I think it's a really powerful metaphor in a way that there are lots of concentration camps outside, but how about our inner concentration camps? Have we ever tried to deal with them as well?
Oh.
Yes, that's really powerful. That's what I'd like to comment.
Thank you, Hidayat. Thank you very much, and thank you for joining from Australia. You're amazing.
Yeah, it's 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, but you're in my group. I get you all the time in the middle of the night. That's okay.
I know.
You're used to it.
All right.
Mark, please unmute. Tell us what's on your mind.
Hi everyone. Yeah, I'm joining here from University of Southwest Florida, Florida in the U.S. So I worked with a lot of young people, university students, as well as population in recovery. So folks in recovery primarily from drugs and alcohol and 12-step programs. And a few of the things that were brought up by Sarah in her presentation, as well as actually by a few others, talk about the conscience and the perception of meaning, and how when we really learn to listen to our inner voice, and we talked about this in my breakout room too, that through becoming more aware of oneself and one's actions and how we're showing up, being open-hearted and open-minded, that through that we can begin to sense our purpose and make meaning from things. And oftentimes I think that's the hardest thing for people, is finding that responsibility to filling in that, and then everything else kind of takes care of itself, because you're guided. In the recovery work, we have what's been passed down is the 4 absolutes, and they are honesty, unselfishness, purity, and love. And the opposites of those would be, well, fear, dishonesty, selfishness. And the interesting one, the opposite of love is not hatred in 12-step recovery in particular, but is fear. So we work on our fears and our resentments, but that's secondary to that primary calling, that purpose to. And the purpose to is calling us to love and purity. And when we focus on what we're called to do, the other stuff, again, will take care of itself as we think about what's preventing us from getting to that purpose. So and it was a wonderful breakout room as well. And if there are things that we don't get to share, I would invite you. There is a long paragraph form posted in the chat to fill out in the evaluation and share your thoughts. If you think about them later, or if you just don't have time to share all of them in our conference here.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for that. Perfect. Yes. Who else would like to say something? And I'd love to hear from someone who hasn't spoken out. I mean, just even a short comment or an insight you may have. So just give us the sign that you're wanting to talk. There we go. Christian, please. Yes, unmute.
Well, I'm deeply impressed from the presentation of Sarah Lynn, and I feel this. I don't know the English word. This conflict, this interaction between having an order, or is it just a task as being part of a community, being an individual in this community, with looking for myself and being aware of everything or everyone around me. So I have a responsibility for the whole, and I must look for myself. And I feel this is a very big task. But I have got many aspects in this minutes here. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you for that comment. I'm sure Sarah appreciates it too. Yes. Who would like to say something? Just basically, it may be a question or a comment, or just something you'd like to see in the future. Yes, Christoph Schwab. Yes, please.
I have just a very small comment about how I end up here, and that I'm very, very happy to see all those presentations, but foremost to see all those people from all over the world. I was walking through Tbilisi and I was checking on the Google Maps about, I was really walking and I was like, oh, I have to check if there is something with the logotherapy in the Tbilisi. And I found the Nino's page. And we couldn't meet because Nino was on the other side of Georgia, and this time it's about 1 month ago, actually, 1.5. Yeah, and so for me, this is a big part of the logotherapy, the Frankel's way of thinking, actually, not only Frankel, but the logotherapy style of thinking, to be open to find the things which are coming to you, be in this kind of reflection mode of life. So
Yeah.
I'm very, very happy. Not only happy, it's much more than happiness to end up here now. In this,
Yeah.
this is something like this, walking through the streets of Tbilisi and end up in this conference.
Yes, yes, there you go. Wonderful. And I must say, I must add that part of the vision that we have of the global logotherapy is just that. I mean, I was in Albania recently and I looked for logotherapy. I didn't find any. But I said, well, wouldn't it be great if everywhere you go in the world, you can connect with someone who is connecting to logotherapy. And the beautiful thing is not just logotherapy, it's logotherapy that's being adapted to a specific use in a specific country in a specific way. The beauty about logotherapy, in my opinion at least, is that it's not limited just to the psychological framework. It can go out into the world in many, many ways, and that's part of our vision. I'm glad that we're all here to discuss that. So thank you, Christoph.
Logotherapy unites. So thank you very much, Christoph.
Yes. Who is that? I didn't see who that was, but anyway. Yeah. Who would like to jump in? We have a few more minutes.
Well, that was Nino, Ronnie, and
Okay.
and maybe perhaps this is the time to ask her what her answer to the question she gave us, because we didn't discuss it. So
Right.
let us not miss her answer.
Well, you might have to
Okay.
come back tomorrow for part 2 tomorrow. No, it's okay. Yes, tell us how, in short, what how you see it.
I will tell in short with words of Viktor Frankl. Joy comes into our lives when we have something to do, someone to love, and something to hope for. I think that's the key.
Yes, that's really a beautiful statement. Is that from Man's Search for Meaning, or what book is that from?
Yes, it is.
Yes, right. Not just by chance it was one of the world's bestsellers. That book is something of a phenomenon. Yeah.
Can you repeat that?
Joy comes into our lives when we have something to do, someone to love, and something to hope for.
Yeah.
It's about self-transcendent, true values, conscious. It's about meaning.
Yeah.
In everything we do.
Did you say something about introducing this at the UN? You mentioned
no, she was talking about the One Humanity Day, which is a day that was tomorrow, actually, that was determined by the UN as a One Humanity Day. To how would you say exactly? What's the exact wording?
I said that we suggested to announce our logotherapeutic, the One Humanity Day, in connection to the United Nations, the International Day of Tolerance.
Right.
I would love to have a conference like this at the UN with all the representatives and take all the world leaders and teach them logotherapy.
All right. We can start with our country, Betty.
What?
We can start with our country in Israel.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Ronnie, may I say something?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, well, two short comments. First of all, I love the notion of an inner concentration camp because, of course, we cannot have any control of the outer circumstances, but we do have control over the concentration camps that we ourselves create in ourselves. And this is really our work, to work ourselves towards freedom. And I really like this concept. At the time in Israel, when we had missiles thrown over us, and we had the safe room, I don't remember how it was called.
Yeah, the protected room, the protected
something like that. And I always thought, yeah, but what about our protected room in our consciousness, the kind of the sealed room in our consciousness? I always thought about that idea. So this is our work, actually, to work towards freedom. The other comment I wanted to make is that when I listened to Erkan, it touched me very, very much, not only because of, I don't see him now in the view. I see. Not only because of your face, Erkan, the way you described your feeling when your son came into the room. It was really, I could really feel you. But it goes beyond that, that although I'm in the first place a philosopher, and I am very immersed in existentialism, but about Levinas, I only know vaguely, and I know about this idea of the face, but I haven't really read him deeply. But I can say from my own experience, and I shared it in our room, that even when I think of a person, even in my imagination, that have done me wrong or that I was hurt by, and I even imagine that I would like to do something bad to him or her. And even in imagination, when I just meet the face of that person, when I see the eyes, I see a human being, immediately my negativity goes away, because I know that that part which I was hurt by is only a small part of that wholeness of a person, of a human being. And beyond the eyes of that human being, there is a whole world, a whole inner world of a mystery for me. So it is so true, this this idea of the face of the other, and I think it really meets very much with the idea of encounter, of true encounter of Franco. And I think there is a lot of work to be done about the comparison between the two, like you suggested, Ronnie, the differences and the similarities. And I would like to cooperate with you, Erkan, at one point, thinking about it. It's a really beautiful idea.
Thank you, Dida. Thank you, Dida. And I would also comment that another philosopher came up in my mind, is Martin Buber, who is very much connected to these two people as well. So that may be an interesting way to go as well. Okay, we're about to wrap up. I'm looking at the clock here. I want to see if any more really quick comments.
Anya has her hand up.
Anya, please, yes.
Okay, so hello everyone once again. Hello, Dida. So I wanted to just relate to also what Dida mentioned, and what I also try to explain in my group, in these mini groups that we got assigned to. Like what Erkan tried to explain, according to the philosopher, when the presence of the other one challenges us in many ways, or just as Dida said, just a face of another one, even on the imagination level, challenges us. And it's sometimes until we don't have a problem with that other one, we don't even come to think to that terms. Because if we really have never, if we had never experienced some troubles and issues on the interpersonal levels, we wouldn't really be able to experience our capacity to transcend ourselves. And it's also we can also think about it basing on the experiences that Franco lived in concentration camps. In that extreme case, he was challenged by the presence of many others in that moment in those camps. And it's what also Erkan said, it's not until the other one disturbs us or makes the disturbing visitation that we are not called upon transcending ourselves and becoming responsible. And that's only my notion or insight from tonight. I also recalled while Erkan was talking about it and explaining the concept, I also recalled personal examples and also from my practice with clients. And in almost every story that I hear from them, there is that interpersonal aspect. So we can also, after all our, let's say, inner concentration camps and battleships, we can in the end be grateful that they exist, because if they were not exist, maybe we would not have ever reached our self-transcending potentials.
Thank you, Anya. Very profound, beautiful. I think we just about at the end of our time here. I'd like to ask everyone, before we end up with a little, you talked about gratitude, a little gratitude clip to finalize our session here. I'd like to ask you, go into the chat and just write down a word or a sentence that you're taking from this conference today. Just a word, just real quick, intuitive word, and put it into the chat so we can see how you felt about what you took from here. Okay, wonderful. Isn't that great to watch?
What?
Like a film, it's going in front of you, just watching it all go down the, yeah. Good, Betty, you've learned how to read the chat, good. Yes, thank you, Margaret. I know it's very late in India too, so thank you for attending. Yeah, we have a lot of wonderful people here, and I want to thank you all for being here and participating. Mark, do you want to have like a quick sentence to wrap up? Where we go from here? Mark, are you there?
Thank you. I was grateful for the invitation to share that we have formed these committees, but that they are a work in progress. We have some really really energetic folks that have joined in outreach and education and digital media. How are we going to get the word out, and how are we going to share among ourselves to share with the world our tools that we have and this great thing that we've discovered in our own work, and that we can help others to discover as well. So if you would like to join us in this process, we'd love to have you. As I say, there are 4 committees right now, and you can select one that you'd like to pop in on, or a few, and they usually meet every week or 2, really short meetings for about a half an hour. And then we communicate via WhatsApp in between, sharing ideas and messages. If you would like to join one of those, or even share an idea for something else, you can add those to the evaluation form, and we'll see your email on the eval, and we'll message you directly to make sure that you have all the info, and so that we can be a part of this together.
That's
I
great. Ron.
really
So-
appreciate you being
So
here.
I'll go out through the evaluation form. Keep in mind, you'll receive that. We love to hear from you. Thank you all. Before we end up here, here's a little clip to get us off
Hey,
on the
Randy,
gratitude.
Randy, before the clip, just one more thing. One thing. If anyone has any comments or questions, or you want to continue discussion about any of the presentations you saw, so you have our emails, and you're invited to write to me. I think I can speak for everybody else as well.
Yeah, you can also put it in the chat. We will look at the chat as well and get back to you. So all those questions there. All righty. So the gratitude dance.
He don't hear. Or I don't hear.
You can't hear?
No.
Hold on, 1 second. 1 second, 1 second, 1
No
second.
voice.
1 second. Of course you can't hear, then put the sound on. Okay. There you go. Start from the beginning.
Now me.
That way, okay?
Shine.
Okay, so I thought you'd like that. For a good way to a good way to finish off this conference, which was international, global, one humanity. Thank you everybody for participating. We're looking forward to seeing you up ahead. Have a wonderful evening, night, day. And for those Americans who are celebrating Thanksgiving next week, happy Thanksgiving. Lots of gratitude.
Okay.
Thank you,
See you
everybody.
tomorrow.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow. Yes,
tomorrow.
tomorrow, day 2. Enjoy.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
It was beautiful.
You.
It was beautiful, Sarah.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Vida.
Thank
That
you,
means a
Sarah.
lot.